Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Before I go any further, let's all just say hello to Malachi. We miss you, Malachi. He's the inspiration for what we're doing tonight. I want to tell a story. I've not told this story. Really, the only ones that know it on this level is the guys I worked with in the 40th precinct. And I know it's 9/11 week, and a lot of us, have been overwhelmed with all the stories. But I just wanted to tell this one because I thought it was a little bit different than the ones you might have heard. So I want to tell you a story about a man who is quite unusual, but someone I think you should know about. A man that I called a friend, a colleague, and a fellow NYPD officer. And a man who I think about very often, not just around the time of 9/11, but as someone I admired and who served the people of this city in a way that few can imagine. John William Perry was a cop that I often worked with in the 40th precinct in the South Bronx, a historically poverty-filled area of immigrants that once hailed from Ireland and now was predominantly Puerto Rican and African American, and was one of the toughest places of all of the NYPD to be a street cop. John was biracial himself and came on the job in 1993. He was also slim and elegant in his uniform, which is always pressed and squared away. He was an impressive looking guy. Many times we would be assigned to work together in a radio car, answering 911 calls and all manner of situations that require a police response. I always enjoyed working with John, as I knew we would have some interesting conversations during the tour. When we had some downtime between calls, we would also talk about our own thoughts as to life, the job, and what the future might bring. For John, being a street cop was more than just being an enforcer, an arbiter, or a renderer of assistance. He approached the job from a more philosophical angle. He would often say that one of our duties as police officers was to protect the civil rights of all people when it came to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, whether we agreed with them or not. The right to be considered innocent until proven guilty, and all of the other First Amendment and 10 constitutional amendments that are known as the Bill of Rights. John would say that we as cops are fortunate to have those same rights applied to us when we are accused of wrongdoing or some act of malfeasance. You see, New York City police officers don't just take an oath to protect the citizens of New York. In that oath, we also pledge and solemnly swear to uphold and protect the Constitution, something that most people are unaware of. I would always learn something of the law when working with John, and I was blessed with a curious mind. John had a law degree from the NYU Law School and had an immigration law practice before he went on to the police academy. It was quite an unusual career path, and John would say that being a cop gave him greater insight into all sides of criminal justice issues, something that most attorneys lacked. He also said that the law meant something to the inhabitants of the South Bronx, but also to officers of the NYPD, and that law should be safeguarded into the hands of fair-minded cops, and that not everyone who lived in the 40th precinct was a potential criminal or up to no good. This is part of the vicious, cynical mindset that can overwhelm many young rookie officers. And I would caution them about falling into that trap and not to be poisoned by some of the older and more bitter cops who felt that way. John spoke 4 languages and volunteered his time to various law projects in the city, and was also a part-time actor with numerous appearances as an extra on TV, shows like Law and Order, and several different films. Not known to most of his colleagues, John was also a board member of the New York City American Civil Liberties Union. He was a true Renaissance man and could speak on numerous subjects with knowledge and confidence, but always in a mild-mannered way that was accepting of differing opinions. In that respect, he broke the mold as to how many New Yorkers perceive an NYPD officer to be. A few days before September 11th, 2001, I was working in the radio car with John, and he said to me, "Al, I want your advice on something, and I want your honest opinion." I said, "Go ahead, John. What's on your mind?" He said he hadn't told many people, but he was going to resign from the department in the next few days and take a job with the New York City ACLU as an attorney. Did I think he was making the right decision, he asked. And what would I do if I were in his place? I thought about it a bit and said, "Well, you know, John, you have 8 years on the job and you're almost halfway to a good pension with full medical benefits for life. You know, all the typically safe responses from a New York civil servant like myself. You get it." But then I qualified it by saying, "John, we all have to follow our calling in life, and if that is your passion, then by all means follow your heart." It was the same advice I hope someone would have given me if the tables were turned. And that is precisely what John did. As fate would have it, on the morning of September 11th, John was off duty, and bright and early in the morning on that clear blue sky day, severe clear, as they call it in aviation terms, he went to police headquarters at One Police Plaza in Lower Manhattan to turn in his badge and sign his retirement papers. Shortly thereafter, as he was in the process of separating from the department, the North Tower was struck by the first plane. Instead of leaving his badge, John picked it back up. John ran out of headquarters into the Trade Center, and in the finest tradition of the NYPD, began to render assistance along with the first responders who were performing rescue operations, disregarding his own safety and the purpose he had set out on in leaving the job that day. John died in the collapse of the South Tower when it fell shortly before 10 a.m. Witnesses said he was last seen carrying a woman from the building. His close friend, Arnold Wachtel, said, "Apparently John was too slow carrying the woman, but knowing John, he would never have left that woman unattended. That was just like him to help people." They found John's body a few days later in the rubble, his badge still with him and his body intact. Nearly 3,000 civilians died on 9/11, along with 72 police officers and 333 FDNY firemen. John William Perry was the only off-duty NYPD officer who died in the attack. The word hero is often misused these days, and I sometimes bristle when I hear it applied to all manner of things. To me, John is the very essence of the word. How easy would it have been for John to remain in the safety of the headquarters building and say to himself, "Well, my days of being a cop are over. let me get the hell out of here. And more introspectively, I often wonder if I would have done the same as John, as he did on that day, given the same circumstances. It is something that causes me to question my own courage and fortitude, because after all, we're all human. My son was only 7 months old at the time, and I wonder if my concern for him and his future would have taken precedence over my duty to those who were crying out for help. For one really never knows what you're made of until the moment presents itself. I would like to think I would have done the same as John, but the answer to that is something I will never really know, and that uncertainty will live with me for the rest of my days. But I am comforted in the fact that I knew a man who had no such doubts and answered the call, and in that moment revealed his true character. And with that, John William Perry lives on. He lives in the values that I taught my son as he was growing up. In the example to all NYPD officers of these days who never knew him, but now they know of him. And the memories of our times together in the radio car, which have never left me and have given me guidance through my own moments of human frailty and knowing that I must always strive to do better. Thank you, John, for what you did and what you stood for. From every New Yorker, from every American, and especially from me, who knows that although you may lose someone outwardly, you never lose them inwardly. Thank you.